Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order this afternoon's meeting of the Delaware County Jail Oversight Board. If we can all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is public comment on agenda items. And so at this point, any comments that are specifically to items on the agenda are welcomed. And if folks from the public have anything to say, please first say your name and address, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Are there any comments from the public? All right, hearing none. Next item is approval of the minutes from October. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 2021.
Thank you, Deborah. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Howard. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next item is an approval of the staffing penalties for October. Warden Mellon.
Staffing penalties for October, $137,246. Just to give an idea of the interviews, you have 39 did not show, 7.
Donna, obviously that's the highest number we've ever seen, by I think a pretty good amount. So I guess the other point of context would be to talk about how this is impacting recreation time. I think that's one of the most obvious ways that understaffing has been impacting operations. Can you talk a little bit about what recently has occurred? I know we may be segueing somewhat into the warden's report, but I think it's relevant here.
So in October, early when they got out, especially when we got the staff. So this past November, hours, there have been service mandates to cover the shift.
I appreciate that. And while we're in this interim period, I think we just have to continue to really do everything we can via our vendor, via GEO, to make sure the circumstances are as good as we can get. Questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve the staffing penalty?
I make a motion that we approve the staffing penalties.
Thank you, Sheriff. A second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Raheem. Any further questions or comments before we vote? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Donna. Next item is a coronavirus update.
October, we had 100 tested. Total since we we've started. 1,554 inmates. Got the doctor out for a vaccination clinic. Really helpful. Fortunately, their medical staff is the same as ours. So, actually, we discharged to a mental health facility run by Elwood, and they Acme, and Acme's agreed to. We're going, it's going to be.
That's great. Progress. Questions, comments from the board?
I was just wondering whether there was any contact with our citizen corps to assist on that. They've been out, my perception is that they've been out helping a lot with vaccination clinics and at events. I don't know whether that's a resource we could tap into. Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying, it might be, maybe we should look into it. Maybe there's some help just in running it with Acme, whatever, so. I think that's a good idea. Yep.
Yeah.
'Cause I think, Raheem, you said food is a good incentive for people if they can have something.
Right. Any other questions from the board? All right. Ms. Mallon, contraband update.
Okay, there were 8,640 cell searches, 7 K9 searches. We did have a car search on Second Street. There was no contraband. We did find one cell phone in the facility. Did have an officer arrested. I did meet with them.
And how does this seem to be trending? How would you compare these numbers to the last few months? Yeah. Questions from the board? Comments? Okay, we'll go to the deprivatization update. Thank you, Donna. Oversight.
We have been meeting weekly. With good cooperation by all. Proposals that were received range to heights from 1 to 9 million to more than 14. Health Department, Department of All-Time Management, and interview for specific questions about overall experience, drug and mental health treatment. trying to fire talent. Just and and
Mr. Lazarus.
I'd like to just add a couple of things on some details I think that are of interest. Many of the members of the board are aware that we have interviews with warden candidates tomorrow. And Mr. Matt and I had interviewed the candidates, and we have 3 very strong candidates. They'll be out to tour the facility, and then we'll have our interviews out at GWH tomorrow. The main personnel concern that I have that is the pay progression scale for the and starting salary for the corrections officers. We are meeting with Juno out at GWH on Thursday, and that'll be one of the topics for discussion. In terms of the key staff, we are in the process of hiring key staff. Council approved those positions at its last personnel board meeting. So I think I'm optimistic about staffing. We do need to continue to communicate with the corrections officers so they can remain excited about becoming county employees. I think as Majid said, the other items are going well. The 2 areas of concern that I would have are firearms and acquisition of an appropriate type and quantity, and then also disposition of the K-9 unit, which probably is just something we need to work through. But all in all, I think with the contracts being awarded with the evaluation team with Magic leading it is doing well. The goal was always to have those contracts in place by the end of the calendar year, and I think we're on schedule to do that. So all in all, I think things are fine. As with any transition, there are some areas of concern that we'll highlight and continue to watch, but I'm pleased with where we are right now.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarus.
I'd just like to add also from my office, we have been working with IT to look at the interface between existing software systems and how to bring them in. The time and attendance program software is Kronos. We utilize that now at Fair Acres. Our prison jail is already a fund within SAP. All the categories really are there. We're looking at our general ledger, how to set that out, and we've provided all that to Lisa Rydell in IT. So we're working on that, and we're moving to weekly calls on the I'll just call it the back office and the accounting side. So we're moving forward on that.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I'll add, I think to Mr. Lazarus's comments about employees and moving forward with the workforce, I will say, to state the obvious, we're going to need to staff a jail, and so we're going to really certainly be giving every opportunity for current staff at the jail to have the opportunity to work for the new county jail. But I also want to make clear that this will be we are turning a page. We're having an opportunity to really, reimagine how we'd like for the county jail to be operated and what standards we expect to hold our employees to. And so I think it should be important for the public to understand that it's not going to be an automatic, that people need to show that they are going to be aligned with the goals, the ideals of the county in terms of the operation of the jail. And, I think there's going to be a look at how folks have performed under GO, what their attendance rate has been. Is it, someone who's frequently not reporting to work? These are things that are going to be important as they're considered under new leadership. I think, just to sort of segue to the medical services contract, are there any questions or comments specifically on the recommendation of this vendor?
I had the opportunity to participate and listen into their presentation, and I was very encouraged and impressed with their approach.
I'll just point out a couple things. One, this is a provider that is well-known nationally. Our consultants at CGL have endorsed them, have said that they're familiar with their work and that they're a well-regarded provider of medical services nationwide and locally. They have work within the state of Pennsylvania. Two, I think it's also important to note that the contract is cost plus. So much of the concerns that we have shared about the incentive structure with a for-profit prison operator, where there is a singular cost to the county, and whatever, sort of, shortcuts on providing full service to the county, there's an incentive there in order to maximize profit. That's not how this contract is structured. So, this provider will have every incentive to ensure that, they're providing what medical services are necessary to the prison population, because it's a straight pass-through to the county. We're paying them, for their overhead and for a profit, but that's independent of the services they provide day in and day out to the population. I think that's an important distinction for the public to understand. And secondly, look, I think it's important to understand that every contract, and this one as well, will have a termination for convenience clause. So if this relationship is not working out, we will hold this contractors, accountable for the work that they do here in Delaware County. But, yeah.
I think what I feel. But, so we have to.
Any other comments before we take this to a vote? Right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendation. Let me say this differently. Approve a recommendation to enter into a contract with WellPath to provide medical services for the Delaware County Jail. Is there such a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarus. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any further questions or comments?
I just have a question, comment. So then this recommendation would then be transmitted to council for consideration by council in accordance with the Jail Oversight Board ordinance. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. Per the recommendation of the Jail Oversight Board, given the fact that this is a contract that would exceed $25,000, it would need to be approved by county council as well.
Thank you.
I also have a comment, and it's not that the recommendation may or may not be a fine one, but as a member of this board, I'm voting on something again that is through a third-party recommendation as opposed to seeing any of the material of the RFP. So I just want that on the record, that the votes that we're taking, unless you were happen to be on that subcommittee or an employee of the county, you would not have seen any of the parameters of the response. And that is not to take away from the vendor. It is merely a comment that I feel a little sidestepped from making an educated decision.
Okay, and I'll make note that and I should have mentioned this at the outset, the Jail Oversight Board did have an executive session yesterday to discuss this matter. The members of the board were given every opportunity to ask questions that wouldn't be appropriate for a competitive bidding process in public. Those questions were available for being asked yesterday. And in terms of the process for any RFP, there does ultimately have to be some degree of trust in the county's procurement procedures and who sits on that panel. And so, again, as board members, we're given the opportunity to ask the executive director the nature of, what criteria were being considered, how the various vendors stacked up. But in the interests of protecting relationships with bidders that did win or did not win, there is a degree of protection that has to be kept. Any other comments from the board?
Well, I'd just like to comment that I agree with Ms. Love. I did request to see RFPs, and I was told that I could not see them, we could not see them, the board could not see them. So I just have to agree with her statement.
Any other comments?
There's supposed to be transparency, but there was a request to see it, and the email, you have the email where I was told that the board could not see them.
Yeah.
Is there a way to have a chart prepared deleting confidential information so that the board can be more informed of the each point compared to the other applicants before this is awarded? In other words, the differences and some type of chart where I tend to agree too that I sit here and I was could not make the executive session yesterday. However, but there's been this is not the first time where, and I know there's reasons, and you're being advised by counsel, there's reasons that information can't be released, and I respect that, but it does result in a board that's not as informed as it should be before casting a vote. So it's not the first time, I'm sure it's not going to be the last if we're going to deal with other vendors in regard to some of the subcontract work.
What I'd say is I think, I would entertain any ideas as to what format members of the board would like, and I think we can work offline before any future contracts to see what form of information can be provided while still protecting confidentiality. So I hear you. I was hoping that an executive session that we had yesterday would allow for any specific questions to be asked. But again,
How can you ask a specific question when you haven't seen anything?
Okay.
I would have to say that I would go back to Councilman Madden's view that we have to trust the process of procurement and the experts that were on the committees, including CGL, who are excellent consultants on this, nationally on running jail operations. Most RFPs that come through that for other services throughout the county, not everyone can read the responses. The RFPs have been up for a while. If there were questions about the RFPs or whether the scope was proper, I think anybody could see that online. So I wouldn't have, other than Ms. Love, I don't know that anyone's got other medical expertise that could have applied to that, but I'm confident that we had enough people with expertise to look at it, so I'm comfortable. I don't think we can drill into every detail, but we have to rely on the people that are running the RFP process.
Well, it really was procurement.
Mr. Chair, in consideration of the comments that were made, I will sit with county solicitor and see if we can get to the point where we provide the same types of information we provide to council, so that when it comes to the oversight board, they have the same degree of information. I think we can talk in general about criteria that were used, and certainly the item that would be presented for approval, it becomes a public document. So I think we can clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, and again, I think in yesterday's meeting, the criteria that the committee looked at was provided, and any questions specific to how any one vendor did on that were fair game questions. I think providing a written document is where council suggested we not get to that point, but again, we can work for making this better each time for the members of the board. Without any further question or comment, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. The next item for this afternoon's meeting is a discussion of the Eighth Amendment to the GTL contract. Warden Mellon.
The FCC released this where, with any facility over. So based on would like us to do two things. They would like us to turn on inmate basically texting. Training was done. They would also like to do video. Little video visitation there. How we build this favor. That would fit right in the unit. About an 8-minute call, but then it would be done by one unit. Different from what we have. Calls are still free.
And where's the, like, what area would they participate in that? Is there a designated area that they would do that? Or is it in the cell, or?
It would be on the unit, right in the day room.
Okay,
I'd like to pilot it, probably with the control unit, maybe the females first. Make sure, one, we have the right connection. Would like to pilot it on certain units. And it as we go.
Other questions, comments?
Warden, in terms of the text messaging, is that monitored so that the same way, say, phone calls would be for, just for whatever the process is?
Yeah, there's certain words that are filtered. So
Thank you.
Any other questions? And what would be the cost to the inmates for the texting? I didn't see it in the amendment. So is it something that was in the original contract, but it hadn't been turned on?
yeah, I think we.
Okay.
But it is
It's in the original. Any other questions?
I think it's a good idea. If we can improve communication with family and we're monitoring for safety and keywords. And then I also think if it can be on the unit, that the pilot program sounds like a good idea. And I assume that it would cut down on transporting people and it just makes it more accessible. And I think the pilot idea is a good idea.
Yeah. I like the part of the updating of the technology. I always talked about how the prison is, a lot of the ways are antiquated, right? And we're really behind of a lot of prisons that operate under a 21st century perception, right? And I think this is a great step towards being in the now moment when it comes to incarceration for residents there at Delaware County. So thank you so much. I think that's a great move for the residents.
Just procedurally, Solicitor Smith, will this be a recommendation to council, or is this an amendment that the Jail Oversight Board can kind of unilaterally approve?
If I could just interject, there's no expense to the county. It's not expense, yeah.
Okay, and so we can approve it, and if at the end of the day, council also needs to, we can always just put that on council's agenda. Okay. So with that in mind, is there a recommendation, I'm sorry, is there a motion to approve the Eighth Amendment to the GTL contract?
I'll make a motion to approve the Eighth Amendment to the GTL contract.
Second.
Thank you, Controller, and I heard a second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? There are no noes. Motion approved. All right. Warden Mellon, the warden's report.
Population.
Right, any other questions or comments on the warden's report? Okay. Thank you, Warden Mellon. Oh, yeah, of course, yes.
They were transported. Early and for residents on the north end. uh, rate for 24 weeks, that's the difference. There were 55 students involved, 50. December 1st, we started to bring social distancing. Our look is to reopen the work. Talking about it, we have 5 businesses that are first stipulated. Like, we have to. Because they. Had issues with. Installer. Long story short, the operational box. That's coming off the.
Good.
And the only last thing, we'll be partnering again with the.
Any questions for the warden?
Yeah, I just had one question. So when, on the video visits and the in-person visits, are they happening despite, say, no recreation or the lockdown, so people are still getting out to do that? Is that, okay, okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? All right, anything else, Donna? All right, thank you. All right, any public comment before we adjourn?
Could you give your name and address?
I'm sorry, Jane Dunbar. Anything about? I just pulled them up on the internet and I'm like, oh my God. I'm on Indeed. Exactly the same thing we have now. One nurse, one RN. All that, but it's right there.
Yes, definitely.
If they're just there, we might as well keep Geo there.
No,
Nobody's watching what they're doing.
If I could, the staffing model includes some business administrator and procurement positions that is full-time at the prison. So there'll be oversight of the contract performance.
And as we discussed, I mean, there was a pretty rigorous, you know, look at each of the bidders for this service. Yeah.
That's the first thing that I saw.
And that may be one data point, but I wouldn't say that Indeed is the only data point in terms of the performance of a particular vendor. I was saying Indeed may be one data point, but that's not the only source of information about. Understood.
And I was like, oh my God, okay, just so you're aware, if I want to look at it, whatever, so. Oh, you said Geo, you're considering.
Ms. Dunbar, I don't want to get too much into that, but I understand your concerns. They're understood.
Okay, I got a phone call. Everybody calls me. Oh, the tablet. What happens with the tablet? And it's a great tablet for calculation. You know how that works. It's a great idea. In-person visits, did they go to the hotel? It used to be an hour, that's all.
And just to be clear, that's not every day, right? That's most days it's more than half an hour. Yeah.
I just have somebody.
Is that not right? I thought the 4 cell. But the 4 cell days, doesn't that equate to? I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about out of, yep, yeah.
I wasn't aware they went to a half hour. Oh, I know.
Thank you.
Anything else from the public? All right, hearing none. Anything further from board members? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.